Yeah, welcome to Mindful Design course introduction demo thing. So after hundreds of hours recording and editing videos with roughly 26 hour course out the end of it, Andy and the fine folks at Piccalilli have asked me to record another video. And I want to show you what the course looks like, what some of the exercises might look like. Basically, just what are you getting yourself into when you take advantage of the time-limited exceptional discount for Consumerism Day, Black Friday, whatever that week's called, where everyone tries to sell you things. If you take advantage of that wonderful discount that's active for a few more days, provided you're watching this the day or the day after it goes out, what are you getting yourself into? What are you diving into? Is it worth your money? Is it worth your time? Of course, I'm going to say yes, but you can judge for yourself. So let's jump into the course dashboard, and I'm going to just talk you through how the course is put together, how it's structured, the different types of videos, lessons, and some of the exercises that we'll be getting into. There are a couple of free videos if you want to check it out and make sure that you can stand the sight of my face and the sound of my voice for 20 plus hours of video content. That's probably going to help you make a decision or not. That's probably quite important. Am I doing a good job? You tell me. But let's dive into the dashboard and see what the course is all about. So this is what you're going to see when you dive into the course. As you can see, I've made quite a lot of progress through the course, and I should hope so too, because I put it together. But this is what you'll see. You'll see all your modules, your top level units, and each one of them will have a lesson in there. You'll see how long the lesson is, so you know whether to prepare some snacks beforehand. A lot of the theory stuff is quite condensed and quite easy to follow, if I do say so myself. And a lot of the practical stuff is very in-depth and follow along and a little bit more like this, streamer mode with my stupid Intel gamer chair. So you're going to be seeing a lot of this for the practical stuff. And you're going to be seeing something that looks a bit like this. That's a bear. More on that later. A bit like this for the actual lesson videos. So we got our talking head lesson videos with some nice little B-roll and all that stuff put in, so you're not always staring at my face, although a lot of it will be staring at my face. As a side note, I watched a lot of YouTube videos in preparation for this course. I've re-recorded entire modules like 2 or 3 times because I thought the setup was shit, but that's a different story altogether, and that's a trauma for me to process outside of a supposed marketing video. But yeah, I watched a lot of YouTube videos that did not kind of treat the human attention span very kindly, and they said that you needed B-roll roughly every 7 seconds. I have not done that. I am trying to respect your attention and not patronize you by throwing flashy shit at you every 7 seconds, and also that is a lot of work. So most of the lesson videos, you're going to be looking at my face and you're going to be learning stuff, and as part of kind of getting the most out the course and all that stuff, which there is a video on, you're going to be sitting here, you're going to have your snacks, you're going to have your cup of tea, wherever it is, and you're going to be taking notes for all this stuff. That's what I recommend. You don't have to do that. But yeah, you're going to get 10 to 20 minute lesson videos as you go through the course. So what are those lesson videos? So very quickly, I'm going to talk you through the theory section. This is where we dive into how the mind works, how the different systems of the mind kind of come together to create this weird, fallible, irrational, unique entity that we call a human being. So jumping into the theory, first module is attention and distraction. And that's where we're going to look at how our attentional systems work. With attentional systems, we're going to look at the default mode network, which is our brain's resting state. Lots of fun stuff to learn there. We're going to look at cognitive economy. Now, there is a free lesson that you can check out. I'm sure someone from the Piccalilli team will put a link in the description for this video. But this is really, really interesting, and it goes into biases and heuristics and how we kind of work on an almost low power mode for a lot of the time. Very interesting one. That's why we've made it free. We'll look at categorization of modes, and then we'll jump into a big practical and start dissecting some tools that design with attention in mind very well, and some tools that do it very, very terribly. Then we're going on to vision and perception, kind of important for designers to understand. We start with object recognition, and then we look at the Gestalt principles, which are going to really help us when it comes to layout and visual field organization and all that kind of stuff. So big deep dive into the Gestalt principles, and that's where we'll do a little exercise as well. We're going to take a shit interface and turn it into a not shit interface, all through using the powers of Gestalt. Lovely stuff. Deep dive on contrast. If you know, super important when we're designing stuff for the web. Looking at conventions, signifiers and metaphor, how they're formed, how do things actually become conventions, what are the most common conventions that we encounter when we're designing. Again, super important stuff. Next, we're looking at learning and memory. This is really interesting, and we get to, at the very end of it, shout at tooltips for 55 minutes. Then we got expectation and surprise. If you remember, in about 2012, everyone was talking about surprise and delight, like throwing confetti cannons at people was a good idea. Spoiler, it's not. But there are some fun things we can do when we understand expectation and surprise and put them together in unique and interesting ways. And we're going to look at that, culminating in understanding mental models, which is going to serve us really well for the practical side of the course. After that, we're looking at motivation and reward. Very controversial topic when it comes to design. We're going to talk about how shit behaviorism is. We're going to throw some shade at behavioral design because that's not a serious thing. And we're going to look at an alternative theory and an alternative approach to designing intrinsically motivating experiences when we dive deep into self-determination. Once we are done with all of that, once we are done with motivation and reward, learning and memory, expectation and surprise, vision and perception, and our attentional systems, we're going to start putting that all together, and we're going to kick off the big coursework side of this course. I know that sounds like a scary word. You're just going to design something really nice, and it's up to you what you want to do with that. So that's where we get into the practical stuff. We're going to have a quick free video detour on process and how we might go about approaching our project and some of the kind of philosophical corners of process that I want to touch on just to frame the practical stuff. And then we're going to kick off our project. We're going to look through a project brief. You are going to go and put together your own project brief. And this is where things get a little interesting. Throughout this practical side, you have a few different options. You can follow along with me until you get to a point where you don't want to follow along with me. So you can follow along with my research and some of my synthesis and my solution and problem space documentation if you want to do that. And then you can go and do your own interpretation of something that is going to solve problems within that problem space. So you can build a similar thing to me, but put your own spin on it. That's one option. The other option is you can follow along all the way, and you can just take what I do, reference it, and do something in your own style. So all the problems are quite similar, or the wireframes, even if you want to use my wireframes, 100% go for it. And you just focus on applying a different visual style, or maybe making some different design decisions throughout. That is an option too. Or at this point, you can just kick off your own project, whether it's something that you think the world really needs, or whether it's just something that you have wanted to build for a long time and you've just never got down to it. So throughout this practical side, you're going to follow me as I put together my project. And if at any point during that following along, you decide you want to do something different, you can go off and you can do that. It's quite modular. We're starting with our research and synthesis, so super important phase of a project, and you have a bunch of options at this point as well as to how you want to conduct your research, or if you want to just use mine, that is fine as well. So tons and tons of stuff in terms of conducting our actual research, and then we move on to synthesizing our research, and we'll put together some lovely little artifacts like affinity maps, user personas, and empathy maps. Once we're happy with our research and synthesis, we move on to documenting our problem space. Now, this is really important and something that we're going to explore a ton, but the actual exercises are going to be super practical, and you're going to come out of it with a really good ability to describe the types of problems that people encounter and the way they might already be approaching those problems. So good, practical, full of workshops, maybe less intense than the research and synthesis that came before it, but this is really going to ground our project. So again, if you want to draw some different findings or observations from my research, you can go off and you can do that, and you can build something slightly different to me or completely different to me. I'm not going to stop you. I'm not your real dad. Then we document our solution space. So this is where we go from, hey, here's a bunch of shit that I think is wrong, that I think people are struggling with, or where I think I can have an impact. This is the thing that I'm going to actually build to achieve that impact. So we'll look at things like building out a feature canvas, OOUX, which is my favorite thing in the world. And I'm really excited to share everything I love about object-oriented UX with you. And we'll start pulling out some of the key moments and drawing up some moment flows for those key moments in our product. After that, we get to the most fun phase of any project. We're going to scribble, we're going to sketch, we're going to draw some wireframes. Super, super important, super fun, super lo-fi, lightweight introduction to drawing some rectangles on a screen. Fabulous stuff. At this point, when we're happy with our wireframes, we're going to take a little bit of a pause on our project, and we're going to take a little bit of a detour, and I'm going to try my hardest to teach you how to be a good UI designer. So we're going to really break down what I believe are the foundational aspects to interface design. You're going to get a little bit, a 12-minute preamble on design tokens, because we will be using design tokens to put a lot of this stuff together, but it's a very lightweight introduction to them. It's not a design systems course. I could not be convinced to make a design systems course. So very high level introduction to design tokens in Penpot. And then we're going to dive into typography. You're going to work through figuring out type scales, logarithmic scales. We're going to try and piece together a really harmonious type scale using the type scale playground that will be provided. We're going to try and get really, really good at typography. So we'll have a big deep dive. You can see here the typography video is an hour and a half long, so that's fun. And then our type scale deep dive is an hour and 10 minutes. And then we've got roughly 45 minutes on top of that in terms of the actual typography exercise for that module. So a lot of work here, but typography is incredible and it's the best thing to play around with. So get stuck in. After that, we're going to look at color. So another deep dive on color theory, color harmonies, and why we might approach color in product and UI design a little differently to how it's approached in visual design and illustration, for example. We're going to look into building out color palettes and eventually color systems based on those color palettes. And then we're going to put all of that together into a very open-ended exercise where we'll combine all the stuff we've learned about color and typography up to that point and do a nice, focused, choose your own adventure style exploration of piecing our typography knowledge and our color knowledge together to make something lovely. After that, we're going to dive headfirst into the murky waters of style and character. How do we spot different styles? How do we spot how certain designs put together and put across certain characters? Essentially, how do we turn rectangles into adjectives? So a deep dive on that. And then we're going to look at exploring different styles through my favorite approach, which is just copying everything that you see. We're going to look at why that's important when you're learning, being able to recreate something. And while you're recreating it, take note of the constituent parts that give it that character. So you're not going to go off and just copy a bunch of stuff and then make that your entire personality. Enough designers do that already. You're going to learn how copying and recreating and distilling something down into its constituent parts can be used as a learning exercise and a way to explore different styles and characters by breaking things down into the really, really tiny granular design decisions. You're also going to put together your own style explorations as well, which is super, super fun. Taking these tiny condensed slices of an interface and just applying different styles to those slices of an interface and just seeing how far you can push those styles. So again, super fun, super practical. After that, we're going to get right back into our prototyping and delivery. So you can see there's like 76 videos here. All of this is going to take a pretty long while to get through. What can I show you? What else can I show you? Let's take a look at one of the... Let's keep scrolling because my course is so long. Okay, yeah. So this is quite meta, isn't it? my face and my face again, and then a screen share within a screen share. But this is what you're going to get with a lot of the more practical stuff. Me in my streamer mode with my incel gaming chair, chatting shit about certain subjects with a nice little slideshow behind me. Alongside these types of videos, you're also going to get much more practical style videos where I'm just in Penpot or I'm in TL Draw, I'm in whatever tool I'm using, and you're listening to me talk through some of the thinking, explain my approach, and for every exercise, every challenge that you get in the course, I'm doing my own version of it and I'm walking you through some of my decisions. With a lot of them, I'm going to be designing on the fly so you can see how I go about things. Spoiler alert, sometimes I make an absolute mess of it, but that's okay. We're all human. But yeah, that's the course. That's what you're going to get. You're going to get a big deep dive theory section to start off with. Every module in the theory section will end with some kind of practical deep dive. And part of these deep dives are to try and get you used to some of the tools we'll be using throughout our practical project, and just to also make sure that this actually hits home and you know how to apply it in the real world. We do go through some pretty esoteric, abstract concepts throughout all of this, and it's important for me that once we've done that I don't just leave you and say, okay, now you know that, go figure it out. So we're always looking for every module. You'll see with the vision and perception module, we're doing a lot of practical stuff. We're going to learn about object recognition and Gestalt, and then we're going to combine all of that together into an exercise. Then we're going to learn about contrast, and we're going to do an exercise. Then we're going to learn about convention, signifiers, and metaphor, and then we're going to do another exercise. So this module alone is going to be hours and hours of content, and depending on how in depth you want to go with the exercises or how many runs and reruns of the exercise that you want to do, potentially hours and hours more of self-guided practice stuff. So every module is like that. This is the biggest module. This is the module with the most practical stuff. This is the module that's probably going to take you the longest to get through, at least in the theory section, if you are diving into all the practical stuff. Some of the other ones we just have like learning and memory, for example, 3 videos, quite in depth, but then we go into a practical thing, which is, like I said, mostly just me shouting at tooltips. So that's the course. In terms of the materials, the practice files, all of that other stuff, I'm just going to take you through a couple of examples of what you will be given and what you will be asked to do for the practical side of the course. So let's jump into that. So here we are in Penpot, the design tool that we're going to be using for the course. It's awesome, it's open source, it's free, and it means that you don't have to give money to Figma. Lovely stuff. So this is the exercise for the Gestalt section of the course. With Gestalt, we're going to learn all about how tiny design decisions can feed together to make certain things look related or less related. And to put that together practically, we have an absolute clusterfuck of an interface, and we're going to try and turn it into something that is not that. So you can see here, we have a lovely, normal, nothing to see here workplace chat tool, and it looks absolutely terrible. This is my finished example, which looks slightly less terrible. And the goal here was not to go overboard with typography and color and turn it into a big design exploration. You're just using spacing, common region, similarity, continuity, all the basics of Gestalt to turn this into something that doesn't look like shit. So that's one of the exercises. We've got a contrast exercise as well, which is where everything on this page is set to its baseline contrast. And you have to go and make the elements that should stand out as much as they need to. So another one, little article about Shrek. You've got to love it. We've also got our convention, signifier, and metaphor exercise, which is a little bit more of a deep dive, where we're going to just go around and look for different examples of convention, signifier, and metaphor in UI design and trying to distill them down into their constituent parts and recreate them ourselves, potentially putting our own little spin on them. So this is more of a deep dive to get you thinking about what makes a button, for example, a button. What makes a slider a slider? What are the conventions that have made their way into the products that we use? And what signifiers are used to communicate the presence of those conventions? So that is one module's worth of deep dives. And depending on how much you want to go into each exercise, potentially hours of self-guided practice from that second module. So that's one example of what you're going to see in terms of the files that you will be given and the challenges that you'll have to overcome. Once you get into the practical side of things, you're going to be putting together a whole host of different artifacts. So you're going to be going through a bunch of different workshops to help synthesize research, document a problem space, do some ideation for your solution space, all of that stuff. You're going to be spending a lot of time slapping some stickies in a TL draw file. And this is our empathy maps example. You're going to put together at least 3 beautiful empathy maps. I'm going to give you a blank example, a starting point for all of these things. And it's going to be split up by each stage of your project. So this is our research and synthesis stage. You can see here we have got observational research. So when we're sat and we're talking to real humans, one of the most valuable skills in a design skill set, we're going to be documenting all of that. We've got our desk research where we're looking for references and conventions. We've got our affinity map, which is super overwhelming at first, but super important and helping us kind of find some common themes and categories between all of the research we've been doing. We've got our empathy maps. We've got our user personas. We're going to be putting all of this together. You're going to follow along with me as I explain how I put my versions of these together, and you're going to do your own versions. And we are going to rinse and repeat all of that stuff until eventually you have a lovely prototype that you're super happy with and you're super proud of, that you can then go and build or learn how to build, or just print your favorite screen out, stick it in a frame and hang it on your wall. Once you're done with the course as well, you will get a certificate, which is going to look fantastic on LinkedIn, I guess. But more importantly, you will have what I believe to be a career's worth of knowledge about designing for real humans. And then you will go off and you will put all that knowledge together and you will do more projects and you will practice and practice and practice using all the purposeful practice tools and resources that you've gained through this course. And eventually, over time, through hours and hours of practice and improvement, you will be an exceptional designer. I can only give you the starting point for that. And that's what I want this course to be. I want it to be a nice slice of a design process where you can come out the other side with something that you're super proud of and something that motivates you to go do it again. Because that's what it's all about, that practice, learning how to do this, learning the tools you need, the vocabulary you need, and the process you need to do this really well, and then going and practicing that and repeating it. So that's the goal of the course. I just spoke in depth about the structure of the course and the exercises and the challenges. I should really wrap this video up. So that's it. That's Mindful Design. That was my very scattergun walkthrough of the course structure, the dashboard, what you're going to see when you actually buy the course, some of the challenges and the exercises that you'll need to do. I'm super proud of it. We've had amazing feedback so far. A lot of people have already dived straight in. They're sharing their work in the Discord, which is a lovely place to be. It's very cozy. It's full of nice people. We're all having a blast. And I think we've done a good job. I think it is worth the time investment. I think it is worth the money investment. And we've still got plans to add to it and make it even better going into the new year. So it's not something that we're just launching out and then treating as abandonware. We're going to have the Discord where you can come, even if it's not related to the course. You're going to be able to ask design questions, get some career advice, wherever it is. We're open to it, as long as you're being nice. And that's it. I think it's a very, very in-depth course. But I also think we've done a good job of making it accessible, easing you in, and leveling you up along the way. So when we do get into that final prototype stage, you have everything you need to go out and do an incredible job. So if that sounds interesting, there's going to be some links you can click to buy the course, check it out, see if you like it, get a refund if you hate it. That's the intro to the Mindful Design course. If you do pick it up, see you there. If you don't pick it up, I'm going to go for a little cry.